So let me ask you something. What do you think is really going on here? Is this about cocaine trafficking and machine guns? Or are we talking about something much bigger, like the largest oil reserves on the planet? The United States just gave the green light to remove Nicolás Maduro from power in Venezuela. Him, his wife, both indicted in New York. The charges? Narco-terrorism, cocaine trafficking, illegal weapons. Sound familiar? Because it should. Trump's first administration brought similar charges against Maduro years ago. But here's where it gets interesting. In the last 30 days, Trump pardoned Juan Orlando Hernandez, the former president of Honduras. This man was serving 45 years in a New York prison for being one of the largest cocaine traffickers in the entire Western Hemisphere. Let that sink in for a second. So which is it? Are we really taking out Maduro because of cocaine? Or is this about the fact that Venezuela sits on the largest proven oil reserves in the world? I'm going to break this down for you, because what's happening right now has very little to do with what they're telling you. Let's start with what really matters here, the oil. Venezuela isn't just another OPEC member. They have 303 billion barrels of proven oil reserves. That's more than Saudi Arabia. In fact, nearly 20% of all known oil reserves in the entire world are in Venezuela. Most of this oil sits in something called the Orinoco Belt. It's extra heavy crude that requires significant technology and infrastructure to convert into the light crude that powers our cars and economies. During the 1990s and early 2000s under Hugo Chavez, Venezuela was producing about 3.2 million barrels per day. Today, that number has collapsed to around 1 million barrels per day because of aging infrastructure, economic mismanagement, and international sanctions. Now, here's something most people don't know. A large portion of that oil has been going to Cuba for free. Why? Because Cuba provides the security forces that have kept Maduro in power. Venezuela doesn't have a particularly strong military on its own, so they've been paying Cuban forces in oil to protect the regime. That's one reason why regime change happens so quickly. Remove that protection and the house of cards falls. But let's talk about an American company that used to control a lot of this oil, Citgo. You know Citgo, right? Gas stations across America. Citgo Petroleum was an American company until Venezuela nationalized it through socialist policies. And ever since then, American interests, particularly Republican administrations, have been trying to get control of Venezuelan oil back. Citgo stopped paying its bills recently, and there was actually a bankruptcy process to sell off Citgo's assets. Here's where it gets more complicated. The Russians have been involved too. They have a 49% ownership stake in Venezuela's state oil company, PDVSA. So when we interdict Venezuelan oil, we're also hitting Russia. It's a two-for-one deal. Now let's follow the money, because this is where things get really interesting. There's a company called Blue Water Acquisition Corporation. They've made a $10 billion bid to acquire Citgo's American assets and oil fields. Who's invested in Blue Water? People in Trump's inner circle, including folks connected to Trump's social like Devin Nunes. Then there's a guy named Fritz Fort Miller. He runs an investment company called Harridan Circle. Through this company, he's invested in the Citgo acquisition attempt and in businesses run by Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump. He's also connected to Cantor Fitzgerald, the family business of Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. See how this all connects? We're 7 minutes in, and I haven't really needed to talk about cocaine at all, because nobody actually believes this is about cocaine. All right, let's address the elephant in the room, the actual charges in the indictment. There are two indictments we're dealing with here, one from 2020, one from 2022, and now new charges within the last 24 hours. Do I think Maduro and his family were involved in narco-terrorism? Probably. Do I think he had connections with FARC and Tren de Aragua? Yes. Could he technically be defined as a narco-terrorist? Sure, I'll give you that. And look, I'm not defending Maduro. Let me be crystal clear about that. The United States has a long history of regime change operations around the world going back to the 1940s. There could be legitimate reasons for wanting regime change in Venezuela. But the pretext of cocaine trafficking? Come on, not when you just pardoned President Hernandez of Honduras, a man who was convicted of being one of the biggest cocaine traffickers in the Western Hemisphere. If Trump hadn't done that, maybe we could believe the cocaine narrative. But he did, so the whole thing falls apart. The new indictment is full of references to cocaine, cocaine, cocaine. But that's just the facade. The real story is oil. Here's what worries me most. What comes after? Sure, there are celebrations happening right now. Venezuelan flags waving in the streets of Miami, in Doral, in Weston, in Kendall. I get it. The Venezuelan community has suffered under Maduro's regime. But what's the plan for day one after regime change? Who's making these decisions? Are we installing Maria Corina Machado, the popular opposition leader in exile who won the Nobel Peace Prize? Are we going back to previously elected leaders? What does the transition look like? How do we ensure democratic elections? How do we support the Venezuelan people through this transition? Has any of this been planned out? Do you trust Marco Rubio to plan a regime change and peaceful transfer of power in another country? Look at what's happened to democracy here in America. That's his day job, and it's not going well. I know Marco Rubio. He's an empty suit, an empty hat. If he's responsible for what happens next in Venezuela, when elections happen, who's in charge in the interim, how we bring Maria Corina Machado back from exile, and how we ensure democracy actually takes hold, I'm concerned. What does that democracy look like? Is it going to be a right-wing, quasi-fascist government? Another Trump-style leader? We know Maria Corina isn't like that. She's more in line with progressive democratic leadership. This follows a pattern we've seen before. Think about the Powell Doctrine. You break it, you buy it. Well, we just broke Venezuela. What's the plan for putting it back together? Look at Gaza. After October 8th, we gave Israel the green light to respond. What was the plan for the day after? There wasn't one. We've seen this in multiple conflict zones. No planning for what comes after military action. Who's making these plans now? John Ratcliffe at the CIA? Pete Hegseth at Defense? Secretary of State Marco Rubio? Stephen Miller? We're supposed to trust these people to shepherd democracy in Venezuela when we see what's happening to democracy here at home. There's supposedly a press conference happening where we'll get more details, but I'm not holding my breath for a comprehensive plan. Here's the bottom line. This isn't about cocaine. It never was. This is about oil, American business interests, and geopolitical power plays against Russia. The cocaine charges are just the story they're selling to the public. I feel for the Venezuelan people. They deserve democracy, stability, and the ability to control their own resources and destiny. But I'm skeptical that this administration has their best interests at heart, or any real plan for ensuring a successful transition to democracy. We'll keep following this story as it develops, because what happens in Venezuela over the next weeks and months will tell us a lot about American foreign policy and who really benefits from regime change. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.